Yo, what's up YouTube? Redbird here. I'm here to confess some mistakes and also hopefully will prevent you from making some mistakes in the future in Thrones of Liberty. If you're waiting for global launch or maybe you're just starting the Hyperboost server, hey, don't do what I do. That's usually the theme of my content. But today, we're going to talk about the mistake I made, which I think hopefully will shed some insight into people as you're progressing through a global launch or, you know, in the Hyperboost server. And then also how not to make the general mistake in Throne and Liberty that kind of will severely impact your overall progression in the game. Excuse me. First off, you know, I came in, you know, I played a lot of crossbow dagger in the original Korean server when the game first launched. When I came back, I'm like, I want some new flavor. So I decided to try a new build, one that I'd heard a lot about and thought I was going to have a ton of fun in. Sword and Shield Dagger. It's a fun, fast-paced, mobile tank that can deal some decent damage. You know, I was excited, pumped even, to create the build. I should have asked some homies what happened to the meta, or what happened in changes since I was gone, and I didn't ask that. Turns out with tier 2 armor and the progression system, melee evasion seems to be pretty much a dead stat. Unfortunately, I put all my eggs in the evasion basket, and we kind of landed here where, you know, I'm having some difficulties, right? I'm having some problems with the build, maybe even potentially looking at a reroll here. So first, let's look at why is that a problem, Redbeard? Why is melee evasion a dead perk? Well, evasion is a stat that basically checks your opponent's hit stat, this one over here, and says, hey, if your stat is higher than the target's accuracy or hit, for every 10 points of difference, chance increased by about 1% to evade. Okay, so that means if my opponent has 700 hit and I have 800 melee evasion, I'm gonna dodge about 10% of the attacks. Problem being is, you know, melee is pretty much dominated by a weapon called Greatsword that has a significantly higher hit than most weapons. So in order for me to make melee evasion even viable at all, I need to at least have, you know, dodging 10% of attacks isn't enough when you don't have any, you know, if you haven't stacked any endurance, you're specializing in evasion. So, you know, I got to have this melee evasion much higher. The problem is Dagger and Sword and Shield, they have really good passives in this category for evasion. Unfortunately, it turns out most of that's magic and ranged evasion. So, yeah. So I'm looking at a reroll, and you may be asking, well, we're not dumb enough to make that choice or that decision. Well, how does this impact me? And I'm here to tell you, you know, just be careful when you're building your character, when you're putting things together in Thrones of Liberty. You know, it may seem like a fun, friendly game that's going to allow you to switch builds on the fly, and going to allow you to try out different weapons and different combinations of statistics. And the truth is that it really isn't that friendly. You really don't get that freedom, at least late game. As you press through the quests, and as you use your quest rewards, your growth stones, your skill books to level up, to you know, trait your gear, to, you know, move past, you know, common to rare to epic gear, you know, you're going to use a bunch of resources that aren't exactly infinite, you know. Once you get to Endgame and once you start the daily grind, which my next video is going to be about what you do on a daily basis to progress your character. Got a lot of questions about that in chat, so I'm going to make that video right after this. But basically, the truth is, once you get to Endgame, you do have a limited amount of resources. You have Solent, which you think, you know, as you level up, it may seem like I'm just gonna get showered in Solent. That's not gonna be the case at Endgame. You're going to spend a lot of this to progress your character. Also, you know, you have your dimensional contracts, your abyssal contracts, these things that are, you know, your contract points, the ones that you use to do your daily contracts, like the video I just made. These things will eventually, if you're grinding and progressing on a regular pace, you know, throughout the game, you're gonna run into some barriers where you're not gonna have these available to you at all times. Okay, so re-rolling a weapon or having to retrait an entire group of armor, it's going to be challenging when you are like pushed down by how many dungeons you can run, or how many open world mobs you can farm for drops, how many contracts you can do to get your soul in up, etc, etc, etc. So just be careful when you set out to do a build. Early on, you can try out weapon combinations and see how they feel. You can look up builds such as on studioloot.com. We're getting all those updated for you guys before global. We'll have them all done and ready to go, so you can have a walkthrough of progression of your builds. It's important to at least decide remotely, like, think about these things. One, like, what are the two weapons that I'm going to put together, and what is the primary role of this weapon combination? And then therefore, two, like, what are my offensive traits that I'm going to want to push into? What are the defensive traits that I'm going to push into? Where evasion is really good early on when you're in blue, everybody's in blue gear and no one can really push the limits of hit. Evasion turns out to be really, really strong. But as you push into in-game and get in your, you know, your epic gear and even the tier 2 epic gear, you have to be cautious with evasion specifically. If you're a tank or fighting in melee range, because, you know, melee evasion is a stat that oftentimes is, you know, overshadowed by endurance in that case. And when you have great swords running around with more hit than you have an evasion, that means you have no mitigation for that great sword, and you are going to die, because Gaia crashed 5 times to the face. Turns out pretty powerful, pretty strong. So hopefully you learned something here. If you have questions, I know I kind of went back and forth and to and fro in this video. If you have questions, let me know in the comments. I'll answer them the best I can. You can come talk to me live, ask questions live on Twitch. Right now I'm streaming Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I know the schedule keeps changing, but boys, we're gonna lock this one in hopefully soon. We got global coming up. I'm probably gonna be streaming even more than this when the game launches. But right now, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays on Twitch, twitch.tv/redbird. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Learn from my mistakes. Don't be dumb like me.